Everybody keeps saying that Brat Summer is dead, but can a legend ever truly die? Let's work it out on the remix. Pitchfork announced the death of Brat Summer last week. First of all, as a publication, Pitchfork's credibility as the tastemaker of cool has been seriously decimated by its folding into GQ and the subsequent dismantling of its editorial team, and it's now not much more than a Rolling Stone AI content farm, with occasional guest writers looped in on a shoestring budget. So, auteurs of the music industry, they are not. That ship has sailed. The internet controls what's cool, and it is simply too porous and expansive in the niche age to be controlled by any one sphere of influence. So, let's start there. Pitchfork does not get to say whether Brat Summer is over. But there is an interesting point that is coming up over and over again that is somewhat addressed in this article. Who decides when a moment ends? It's certainly true that when corporations and brands co-opt an organic viral trend, it automatically ends its run as being a key for the terminally online. Why? Well, brands have, started doing something very humiliating, mimicking real people being messy on social media behind faceless corporate profiles, trying to seem unhinged. It's very much giving hello, fellow kids. On the internet, you can actually discern tone and intent from even a tweet or a 15-second TikTok. When you see the latest Apple dance is coming from a bunch of accident insurance lawyers in a bleak office with the dollar signs of a viral moment in their dead eyes, you know that something special and organic has turned into something co-opted and a bit spoiled. But does that mean that Brat Summer is dead? I'm not sure. Brat Summer has had a great run of organic viral content. Some of my favorites were the various Photoshop iterations of the Brat wall, our collective immediate understanding of what it means to be so Julia.
That girl. And I think
and the various girl so confusing edits of the Real Housewives fighting each other and pop stars with famous beef. I made one for Katy Perry and Taylor Swift, and it was a true joy to create. That version of Brat Summer is certainly over, though there will still be pockets of hee-hee moments now that it's been taken over by old people who would otherwise not know who Charli XCX is and mangled Brat Summer beyond its purpose. Something has died. But who killed it? In the Pitchfork article, Ariel Gordon turns the responsibility back on Charli herself by simply tweeting Kamala is Brat. Charli gave permission to a new presidential campaign to do the ultimate form of co-opting, which is taking something for the people and using it for political gain. The Kamala coconut edits with Brat fan cams were genuinely funny until her presidential campaign caught on and started using it to their own advantage. It feels cynical, and we, the audience, the plebeians, the normal people who are just trying to have a big inside joke on TikTok, are immediately aware that Kamala Harris does not care about the spirit of Brat Summer. She cares about finding young people and getting something from them, their votes. This is the way the world works now, but we are more in tune with it when this is happening. I think it's kind of unfair to place the blame of Brat Summer being co-opted squarely on Charli's shoulders. After all, Brat Summer is bigger than her and bigger even than the record itself. What's happened is a short-lived cultural phenomenon that spoke something back to us that we needed to hear. We can, in fact, still have fun. We can be and silly and go to parties and get up and still emote fully. Brat Summer walks the line between cool and uncool in a very delicate way, kind of making it the ultimate cool. Am I explaining it right? These things are kind of hard to get down. The better question, instead of who killed Brat Summer, is who owns Brat Summer? What is it? How did it happen? And was it ever something purely devoid of commerciality which supposedly killed it in the first place? I'll be exploring this in today's video while charting the album rollout to analyze how pop's most intuitive internet starlet won this year's viral Olympics. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Zach, I'm the Swiftologist. I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture. In today's video essay, I'm going to be talking about Charli XCX and Brat Summer, but you can recently catch me talking about a host of topics. I just did a video on the fall and rise of Chapel Row, and I talked about Camila Cabello's flop rebrand. There's a lot more coming your way, so make sure to subscribe. Over 50% of you that watch my videos are not subscribed, and that's really rude, so let's change that. Though Brat Summer was indeed an album marketing campaign masterminded by the brilliant and ever online Charli XCX, the seed from which it sprung is a truly great piece of art that met a moment in pop culture that was so ready to receive it. So let's talk about how it came around. Something kind of snotty, something kind of rude, something kind of bratty arrived at the beginning of June. Charli XCX's seminal text, her sixth studio album, Brat. This is an artist operating at 100, next level Charli, if you will. Brat is a pulsing ode to a life lived in the public eye, and more than anything else, this record is an exercise in strategic vulnerability, continuing Charli's long game of metapop where she opines on her uneasy and mystifying relationship with other artists and with herself and fame, and she wonders, for example, on the album Highlight Rewind, why she can't stop caring about where her songs chart on the Hot 100 and if commercial performance is even important to her. Strategic vulnerability is something that I've talked a lot about when it comes to Taylor Swift. Celebrities are careful and right to only share the unflattering parts of themselves that can be successfully monetized. For Taylor Swift, that's accounting in painstaking detail the trials and tribulations of love. Charli's practice is very different. She's not necessarily being candid here about Charlotte Atchison, her legal name. She's dishing about Charli XCX, this kind of larger-than-life party girl persona that has formed over her years in the spotlight. It's fairly easy to be vulnerable. I've mentioned this before. Simply pouring your heart out and announcing your deepest feelings is not artful in and of itself. The skill, the practice, and the craft comes from learning which moments of your vulnerability should be transmitted through an artistic medium of your choice. In and of itself, vulnerability does not necessarily lend to Charli's chosen lane of genre. Hyperpop, PC music, dance, rave, these things all kind of lean towards irony or irreverence. I'm not saying that all of this music is ironic. Of course, we have our sincere party girl pioneers like Robin, and more formatively for Charli, the effervescent and no longer with us Sophie, who showed that on the dance floor, it's okay to cry. Brat is compelling because it straddles both facets of this genre at the same time, often on the same song. Brat spotlights the defensive posture and eye roll from the it girl in the club with her sunglasses on, while also showing us what happens when the it girl's eyes well up with tears behind her Balenciaga shades, a knot forms in her stomach that forces her to exit the dance floor and recover, bum on the floor of a dirty bathroom stall, knees pressed up against the cubicle while the endless goodnight burns on without her. The record comes from both of those places, and I think that's why it has resonated so widely with people. Firstly, Charli has been perfecting her thing, her act, for years. Amidst label struggles and being ahead of her time, it finally feels like the culture has caught up to the silly but serious artistry of our most forward-thinking main pop girl. And yes, I think at this particular moment, at least during Brat Summer, Charli is the main pop girl. We see echoes of what animates next level Charli also in other popular phenomenons from this time, Sabrina and Chapel, lighthearted humor and earnest self-discovery over intoxicating beats. The current under Brat's momentum, though, is Charli's keen awareness of the culture, and absolutely none of Brat Summer would have been possible without her expert ability to vibe check. In an interview with Resident Advisor, she said that her music has always been about the concept of being an artist.
That like my music is like, I'm not like a political artist, right? My music and my artistry is about the concept of being an artist and the concept of pop music and pop music in pop culture. And so for me, the pendulum has to swing to give me that dialogue, you know, because it's about that inner turmoil. Like across all records, it's always about the inner turmoil. Even if I'm singing about romance or, I don't know, like going to the shops or whatever, the lens is through this look at the industry.
Charli XCX is excited by the death of the monoculture and the potential that it creates for anyone to be a star. She's enthused by this because the gradual atomization of the mainstream over the years has really allowed Charli's more off-kilter pop music to enter popular culture in a way that it probably wouldn't if what we listened to was still dictated by A&R and radio executive. Charli's blunt about what the death of the monoculture means for the pop star. As she said in a viral clip, music is not important. Being a pop star is about so much more than the records in 2024. It's about the whole package, character, and world building. I'm going to quote her from an interview with GQ here. Persona is intrinsic to the modern artist. We used to live in a time where artists could live in a vacuum. You could have a great song, even a great album, and not be super immersed in gossip culture. What gets me interested in artists is when they have not really a backstory, more like lore. This quote really revealed to me Charli's brilliance as a contemporary pop star. She knows that it takes more than a confessional, or as she would describe it, flaccid series of emotional focus grouped songs to have a moment like Brat Summer in 2024. You need to meet people where they are, and in today's culture, no one really cares to hear your labored sob story. Charli said that she wanted to create this world of 2000s flip phone, camera flashing, live fast, die young. This focus on aesthetic and performance does not mean there's no emotion or vulnerability at play, because Brat is a very revealing album, to a certain extent. Charli said that she wanted her lyrics to be conversational because that's what she thinks pop culture is. A 15-second TikTok, a selfie in the cloud, a text to your friends being like, where are you at? Brat Summer did not just fall out of a coconut tree. In a certain sense, Charli has been masterminding this moment for a number of years, creeping towards the true next level Charli, this embodiment of the very best of her skill set, on display at a time when we are ready to have her. And as an example of this long game, I want to take, for example, the success of Vroom Vroom. This was her first creative collaboration with the visionary Sophie. It's a cult classic in 2024, but how was it received when it came out as an extremely jarring and boundary-pushing single from an otherwise very conventional pop star in 2016? Not well. It was unilaterally panned by critics and found a very small but devoted audience who really got what Charli was doing. For years, her scene was playing tiny basements after opening for Taylor Swift on the Reputation tour to crowds that simply didn't get or were not even remotely interested in what she was even trying to do. But eventually, we circled back because Charli has her finger on the pulse. It's interesting to view pop music, specifically as it's received by young people in the USA, because that's often who it is marketed towards through the context in which it lives, as Kamala might say. There are kind of a few different ways that mainstream mainstream pop has responded to political moments. Recession pop is having a bit of a revival right now. The head empty, just dance gonna be okay. Let's try and find some freedom and comfort on the dance floor in the difficulty of the recession during Obama's first presidency. Trump presidency, which is where Charli really started to experiment with PC music and met her fateful long-term collaborators A.G. Cook and Sophie, was a time of resistance pop, gloomy pop, statement pop. Everything felt quite dark and focused and serious. There wasn't a lot of room to play. Trap and hip-hop had a huge influence during this era, and this frenetic, very energetic, often superfluous music that Charli had begun to make on mixtapes like Number One Angel and Pop 2 were simply too far out of step with the mainstream to penetrate popular culture at large. But the pandemic, I think, is really where things started to shift for Charli, because what is she best at? Well, partying. That's kind of her whole thing. She released what many to consider to be the first quarantine pop record, How I'm Feeling Now, in the summer of 2020. It was a darker, moodier, but still thrashing continuation of her hyperpop experiments. The mood was a bit more serious. She was writing love songs to her then boyfriend, like Forever and the fan favorite Party For You. But there was something very fun and interactive about this record. Bits and pieces of it had appeared before it was released, and it felt quite insular and sensitive, something that we needed to hear. And those early pandemic years, 2020, 2021, were kind of full of these works. Charli's was decidedly harder than the rest of it, but I think the sentiments and the ethos were the same. We saw a similar focus on interiority with Taylor Swift's Folklore and Evermore, which were also released in 2020. So let's skip forward a bit. After the world goes back to normal, Charli decides as a social experiment, she's going to embrace this character of the vapid, label-created pop girl and releases what is her most straightforward pop record yet, Crash. It was quite successful and certainly returned her name to mainstream consciousness in a way it perhaps hadn't been for some time when she was working it out in the basement. But that takes us to around 2022. The world is finally ready to party again, and there was a huge appetite for live and in-person events following years of restrictions and shutdowns. But it seems that many of us had forgotten how to party, and a whole generation of younger people who were finally able to do so have been deliberately kept out of the rites of passage that prepare them for raging. House parties, sneaking out, raves, concerts. There have been several semi-viral TikToks talking about how concerts, crowds, and parties are just kind of dead now, filled with zombies on their phone, people who are unsure how to behave in this unfamiliar environment surrounded by strangers.
I'm very concerned about the future of my culture, which is clubbing. I'm going to write some letters to authorities like soon. This is a dying art. They're forgetting this craft and how to do it. The young girls, they don't even know how to dance on a table in a heel.
So although the appetite, the craving to connect in person was there, we had kind of accidentally created a generation of lonely, awkward young people who didn't know where to start. And plus, so many of the cool places where this sort of nightlife existed did not survive the pandemic, as there was no real way to replicate the feeling of sweating on the dance floor in a packed room virtually. In a Meta Gallup survey, 27% of people aged 19 to 29 said they felt very lonely. And this is where Charli becomes the messiah. If there's one thing she has always known how to do, from when she went to illegal warehouse raves as a teenager with her parents to now, it is party. And I think it's no coincidence that amidst this kind of loneliness, alienation, and hyper online era, Y2K aesthetics have gone totally viral again. To Gen Z, that is what being young should feel like: hot, glamorous, popular, free of the shackles and pressures of posting online all the time. Some of the iconic images circulating during this time are of the it girls wearing big sunglasses, falling in and out of clubs, captured by the paparazzi, dancing on tables, telling people to stop being desperate. Charli is deeply familiar with this imagery. It's not new to her. She grew up on it, and she also grew up idolizing it in the same way that Gen Z does now. She also felt disconnected and alienated from a cool life as a young girl in Essex who had her parents bringing her to illegal raves. All of this to say that tapping into her familiarity with the iconic aesthetic of Y2K, alongside her intuitive knowledge of how to make songs that people want to get up and dance to, was the perfect storm for Brat Summer to exist. And how did she launch it? Not with a single, no, a series of in-person DJ sets with the legendary Boiler Room, a club promoter and live music collective that organizes raves in cities all around the world. The Boiler Room style of DJing is quite unique. It brings the DJ closer to the crowd, either by live streaming the events with like a POV style webcam bedroom DIY feeling, or by literally positioning the DJ in the middle of the crowd. And this makes the set feel closer to people. Traditionally, DJs are kind of like tucked away, these faceless overlords that program the party. Not so with PARTYGIRL. So Charli announces the very first event of the Brat era in February of 2024 with the Boiler Room PARTYGIRL live. She's previewing the record here and testing the waters to see how the crowd is responding. By her side is George Daniel, her fiance and collaborator, and A.G. Cook, who often performs with her in these kinds of settings. She shows up wearing a shirt that simply says Club Classic, because she is, after all, the party girl. She's also introducing her fan base to the world of Brat's taste. She's playing Every Time by Britney, To Die For by Addison Rae, Julia Fox's then unreleased banger Down the Drain. There is something very internet about what she's doing here. She has Julia take a mic and literally dance on the DJ booth. This goes viral on TikTok. And of course, she's teasing songs from Brat, and the audience is eating it up. Shortly after the set, she announces the first single from Brat, which is called Von Dutch, and it will be released at the end of February. The title of this track is, of course, a reference to the iconic Y2K brand that was favored by the likes of Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. Von Dutch is a hard, confrontational, in-your-face track. The meta-commentary has already begun. Charli's addressing herself as this deified alternative figure who maybe has the range to do more cult classic, but I still pop. It's got that dead-eyed wide, vapid, I got money, you get mad because the bank shut, terrifying focus on consumerism. And the music video is honestly an aesthetic world that I'm really obsessed with. Something that I got as a reference immediately was Taylor Momsen escaping from the paparazzi meme video.
Hey, Taylor, how was your workout? Fine. Look out!
But like elevated and made chic, which is the whole Brat ethos. What if my silliness is serious? What if it's not? Who cares? You're moving. In the video, Charli is a star pursued by an aggressive cameraman, but instead of simply running, she's attacking the lens back, repeating over and over, "I'm your number one," as blood and bruises form on her face. She can't help but pose and preen and serve while she's escaping the relentless glare of the public eye. One of the smartest branding moves in music history of recent memory takes place, the Brat album cover. It's a garish, frankly hideous shade of green with the word Brat stretched in Arial font. It looks like a deep-fried meme, and not what we expected from our pop girl album covers. Charli immediately faces blowback from literally every area when she announces this. Her fans hate it. The top liked comment under the Instagram post is, "This better not be the final album cover," and her label were really against the idea of not having her face on the artwork. She immediately rejects what she calls the urge to own female artists by putting their image on all their work in an interview with Vogue Singapore, saying, "I wanted to go with an offensive, off-trend shade of green to trigger the idea of something being wrong. I'd like for us to question our expectations of pop culture. Why are some things considered good and acceptable and some things considered bad? I'm interested in the narratives behind that, and I want to provoke people. I'm not doing things to be nice." The cover was also not just put together on PixArt randomly. She went through 500 different shades of green and many typefaces to arrive at this seemingly simple but layered and iconic album cover, and it's instantly memorable. It literally stands out from the rest of the records on the shelves in stores, and so the Brat era begins. Charli has said multiple times that inhabiting a character fully, like really embodying the persona of each record, is very important to her. And the Brat character is kind of like the album cover, a bit offensive, triggering the sense in the viewer or the listener that something is wrong, challenging your notions of what is good and what is bad and why that is. While this is all happening, she is of course very active on social media, serving looks left, right, and center. She's attending events and she's getting dressed by high-end designers for them. Now here's where the internet narrative of pure moment not corrupted by greedy corporations and commercialization, can we go back to those days, peddled by Pitchfork, kind of falls apart. Before Brat even came out, the hype surrounding Von Dutch and PARTYGIRL was timed with collaborations with these aforementioned designers who dressed her for events and got tagged on her Instagram and TikTok. What was the result of that? Once Brat actually came out, roughly $22.5 million in media impact value according to Launch Metrics, which analyzes the value of a brand or individual's post, article mentions, and social interactions. Searches for Brat Green were surging on shopping platforms and will likely feature heavily in catwalks this September, just like how Barbie Pink infiltrated fashion last year. As you can see, the mastermind herself, Ms. Charli XCX, did in fact have a dollar sign in mind while orchestrating the marketing of Brat. This is not America's next top charity, it's the music business, and it shocks me when people act surprised about that. You'll see as we go on just how present Charli was for the rollout of this record, but something I really appreciated and thought was very emotive and touching was her performance of the yet-to-be-released, at this point, album track, So I, at the Billboard Women in Music Awards. It was a really gorgeous thing to do, to honor Sophie while being honored herself, paying homage to an artist that really empowered her and pushed her creatively. And this song is really just a very beautiful, simple tale of missing someone and wishing you had more time with them. Having the sensitivity alongside the brashness of Von Dutch really captured my interest. I'm kind of Charli agnostic. I have always appreciated her as a tastemaker, but never really connected with any of her records properly before Brat. And then all of a sudden, we have an Addison Rae Von Dutch remix with Charli. The top comment on her Instagram post about this is hateration, but people truly just don't get what Charli is doing in real time. They only seem to understand it as iconic in hindsight. Addison Rae is like the embodiment of if Y2K met Gen Z and had a baby. She has that disaffected, vacuous, compellingly blank it girl energy, but she has also been co-signed by real tastemakers like Charli, who said that she has great musical instincts. One of her musical instincts was to do the iconic Scream on the Von Dutch remix. And I'd say this was the first truly viral moment of Brat. We've all heard that sound, right? It's a strange, feral, overtuned, long-held shriek that distorts over the beat. This is not your typical pop song. You're not going to hear this at Wendy's or on the radio, but all of a sudden it's having a kind of mainstream pop culture moment, but mediated through the place where we actually go to find things without being dictated to about what is cool, TikTok. It was very clever of Charli to do this remix with someone who is so synonymous with this new way of communicating and this new role of stardom. The very embodiment of that anyone can be a star fascination of Charli's that she entered this record and persona with. Then some summer shows are announced and they immediately sell out. Then an arena tour is announced, which was a very distant possibility for 2016's Vroom Vroom Charli. The actual rollout of singles and songs was also pretty masterful. Post the Von Dutch remix, we got a double release of Back to Back and Club Classics, and Charli at this point had been telling anyone who would listen that this record was a club moment. And these songs are probably the best examples of this on the record, but they're far from the best songs on the record, and they don't enter into that emotive territory that ended up capturing the zeitgeist later on. Let the world build. Don't show everything at once. Reveal treats over time. This was expert breadcrumbing. Something that I appreciate about Charli is that when she's in promo mode, she's doing the most. She's everywhere she can possibly be. She was on podcasts, she did Radio 1 Big Weekend, a bunch of summer festivals, she attended the Met Gala. A note that any pop star can take from Charli is that an album rollout doesn't have to be 2 music videos and 2 songs, 1 SNL performance, and a cute Jimmy Fallon interview. It can be so much more than that. And that really helps people, first of all, know that you're releasing something, but also help them feel like they're involved and invested with it. Not just that they're being sold to, which is of course what's happening anyway. Charli is booked and busy. She announces a co-headlining tour with Troye Sivan, which is smart aesthetically, but a bit silly practically because the audience overlap is insane. Like, they are not bringing new audiences to each other. And I think half those arenas were empty last time I checked. But a separate conversation to have is whether Charli's Brat Summer has actually translated into a bigger audience sustainably or not. Anywho, then we get the gag of the century, 360. A wall pops up in Greenpoint in a signature Brat green hue with the lyric, "I'm your favorite reference, baby." This song is actually super clever. It's definitely the poppiest thing on the record, but when you take it out of context and just look at it as a coconut, it is a peculiar song. I'm everywhere, I'm so Julia. What does that mean? We were all wondering, but Charli had kind of left us with clues having Julia at her PARTYGIRL set. What she meant was, I'm so cool, I'm an it girl. And what is 360 about? It's about being the iconic it girl. The opening line kind of encapsulates the long game of Brat Summer. I went my own way and I made it. She's referencing her own lexicon of coolness here, things that she finds to be cool that would accompany an it girl: Gabriette, Julia Fox, A.G. Cook, jumping up and down in the club, looking like an icon, working your angles. But where she really cooked and where I really fully got Brat was in the music video for 360. People, this is art. This is art. 2 music videos clearly is all you need because both of these Charli visuals are bangers, and now we have guests too. The scene of 360 is the who's who of who's that of obscure internet girls. These are the niche divas. We have Julia, of course. We have Rachel Sennett. We have Emma Chamberlain, Chloe Ferry, Alex Kinsani, Chloe Sevigny. I cannot describe to you how iconic this casting was, especially with Chloe Sevigny. You'll notice that most of these girls are iconic, not necessarily for being great talents, but for having great presence. And Charli, in the opening kind of scene and bit, gets them to articulate what that is in the intro, where she discusses crowning a new it girl. What qualities must an it girl have? She's to be a little scary, known but unknowable, a little certain je ne sais quoi. She's also offering a comment here on how random and fickle it is to be an it girl. They all just kind of sit around and decide that, okay, here's a new one. And that's it, meeting adjourned. Then she just serves with them in these kind of strange, drab but chic setups over an old man in hospital, down the street, in the DMV, making it all the more iconic by contrast of how ordinary it is. Also, the brilliance of having Chloe Sevigny as the blueprint for an it girl at the very end. Intergenerational cool girls, so sick. Best music video of the year by far. The single also has a very iconic cover. You can tell there was consideration put into these choices that seem rather effortless. It's a very thoughtful performance, which is kind of the whole Charli project. And then she gets Robin on a remix. Ugh, Charli has incredible references and we love to see it. 360 becomes a bona fide hit, especially by Charli standards. She doesn't frequently chart on the Hot 100, but so far 360 has peaked at number 55, which is great for her. It's an iconic TikTok sound, and you'll find that most of the hooks on Brat are. And I have to think that was intentional, given how instrumental that medium has been for Charli when thinking about how pop stardom has evolved over the years. But what I like most about these songs is that the TikTok-y parts of them are often the more boring parts of the songs. More interesting constructions await you in the full versions of these tunes, which usually isn't the case with a focus group TikTok hook that is designed just to keep your attention for 15 seconds. Before we go any further, please enjoy this message from our gorgeous sponsor, Skillshare. I've been trying to advance my editing game lately as I incorporate more multimedia into my video essays. Hopefully you've noticed my B-roll clips by now, and with classes and learning paths on Skillshare, it has been super easy to level up. So I want to say a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can really help you take your career, your skills, your hobbies, your passions, and even your side hustles to the next level. And though I'm focusing on editing right now, there are so many different kinds of classes on all aspects of content creation on Skillshare, from organizing your life with Notion to lighting, editing, and filming 101, and even storyboarding classes on creative writing ideas to help you actualize little sparks of creativity that you haven't yet brought to life. For me, this Brat Summer is all about focusing on refining my content creation skills, just getting better at finessing the details, which I am prone to overlook as an ADHD-ologist. I'm sure you've noticed at least one one glitch in all of my videos, and I'm trying to fix that. With that in mind, the class that I recently completed is the Complete Beginner's Guide to DaVinci Resolve by Addison, who is a YouTuber and also a videographer. DaVinci is a game changer for me because it's a free editing software that is just as powerful and, as I've discovered, a lot less glitchy and accident prone than Adobe Premiere Pro. So what I love about this class in particular is that it takes you from top to bottom with DaVinci video creation, from importing clips into your timeline to color grading basics and all the handy shortcuts that save you a massive amount of time in your edit. This class really helped me get a firm grasp of a completely new interface really efficiently. But if, like me, you're looking to level up this Brat summer, the first 500 people to use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today, and thank you again so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So Charli shows up to the Brat wall to blast 360 on a boombox on top of a parked SUV with a crowd thronging around her, and this is the excellence of the Brat campaign, translating the online to the offline by bringing it IRL. Again, something that she's so uniquely positioned to do as the party girl. People love to feel like they are a part of something, and this really felt like something worth being part of. She's on the cover of Rolling Stone, and then she launches a Marc Jacobs collab as well. She's doing the most. Then it's album time. And I remember when it finally came out thinking like, oh, something's shifted with this release. There's like a palpable excitement of people wanting to get involved. Girlies are making their own Brat shirts with the ugly green and the stretched out type. There are Bratmobiles making their way around town. Every gay club is hosting like a listening or a release party, and Charli's randomly popping up at them. Even though it's all very calculated and intentional, it still feels really fun and authentic because people actually liked the music. And of course, Brat debuts to critical acclaim. This is something that has always come much easier to Charli than commercial success throughout her career, supporting the ahead of her time allegations. I think it's the highest rated album of the year so far, with a 95 out of 100 weighted average score on Metacritic. That's crazy and deserved. The Guardian review by one of my favorite music journalists, Laura Snapes, encapsulates the phenomenon of this really well. Brat transcends exclusivity because Charli's unbarred feelings of insecurity, bitchiness, and obsession are so fiercely well observed that they make tedious footnotes irrelevant. They hit less like complaints about fame, pop's most deadening theme, than profound observations on all kinds of relationships, not least how women end up constructing brusque persona to survive the stupid hell of socialization. Charli's party girl club nights may be famously impossible to get into, but here the only price of entry is ever having worried about where you fit in. Beautiful words, brava. Let's talk about the album, shall we? Remember when Charli said that music wasn't enough and there simply needed to be persona and lore to drive intrigue? Well, I'd say that was the main interest driver in Brat beyond the pleasing Y2K aesthetics. There are a few songs here that contend with threads Charli has woven throughout her music in new and excitingly direct ways. Rewind, Sympathy is a Knife, and Girl, So Confusing. On Rewind, Charli's reflecting on her relationship to being famous, the ways in which it changes your life and perhaps even makes it smaller than it once was. Sometimes I just want to rewind. I'd go back to a time when I didn't overanalyze my face shape. Nowadays, I only eat at the good restaurants, but honestly, I'm always thinking about my weight, she sings. She goes on to very candidly talk about calling the paparazzi, saying that she knows that everybody does it, but why does she now feel embarrassed by it? She also confesses to thinking about Billboard and whether she deserves commercial success. And I think psychologically, it's been quite hard for Charli to feel satisfied as being known as the underground legend. There has always been a part of her that has yearned for the pop stardom that the likes of Britney Spears had, that she grew up idolizing. But unfortunately, despite her insistence that it could be hers if she wanted it, I don't think she was made for that. Songs like these continue to position Charli as the music industry's inside outsider, and that's a stance that we can relate to as the audience. It's certainly more relatable than a song about being famous like Look What You Made Me Do, for example. Charli's also not mincing her words here. These songs, though they are cutting and frequently insightful, are not verbose. She's sticking to that voice message to a friend vibe throughout. Speaking of the inside outsider, I Might Say Something Stupid is another brilliant confession. You can listen to the song through the lens of being a lonely Gen Z teenager who wants to party but doesn't know how, or you can inhabit Charli's position that she declares as famous but not quite. Again, she's getting at that gnawing insecurity. Do I deserve more? Why can't I have it? She talks about how the party girl thing on this song is indeed just another performance. This is the moment where we follow the it girl to the bathroom stall. We get visions of Charli giving herself a pep talk in the bathroom mirror, drinking too much nervously, and the most interesting lyric here, I'm perfect for the background, 1 foot in a normal life. And I think that's how much of the general public interacts with Charli. Like, oh cool, there she is, but she's never been, until Brat Summer, the main character. It's kind of a special torture, no? Or a mind twist at the very least, to show up to these sold out rave shows with people who are prostrating themselves to you and telling you that you're the god of music, this revolutionary visionary, and yet when you walk around the Grove to get your Starbucks, no one's stopping to take your picture. Let's discuss those songs that are really driving the lore and the intrigue around the album. Sympathy is a Knife and Girl, So Confusing. It's pretty rare for us to hear from a pop girl what it feels like to constantly be duking it out with other pop girls and vying for the same things. There's only one winner of every Grammy. There's only one #1 spot on the charts each week. Charli's perspective on both of these songs returns a much needed nuance to our discussions on female friendship, specifically through the prism of the music industry. Can't it still be girl power to not get along or feel like when you compare yourself to your peers. She's spoken in interviews about how frustrating it is that everyone expects all the women to embrace some sort of girls supporting girls delusion where you love and are close to every single other girl that you meet. That's not realistic, and it's not rooted in reality either. And I think it was very brave of Charli to write about this, but also very clever. This is strategic vulnerability. Ultimately, this confession of feeling bad in comparison to others and perhaps more successful artists makes us perceive Charli as more authentic and honest than them, and perhaps an underdog to root for. Everything is a choice and a performance when it comes to pop music, even when it seems like a note stripped straight from a diary. Sympathy as a Knife is quite controversial, actually. I don't want to share the space with you. I don't want to pretend to smile at you. Your very presence reminds me of something I'm not and can't be, more than background music with one foot in a normal life. My boyfriend tries to reassure me that it's okay. I'm special in my own right. I'm a cult classic, but that just makes it worse because I couldn't even be her if I tried. And you telling me that it's okay is literally just rubbing salt in the wound. She goes on to actually talk about wanting to shoot herself. She says, I don't want to see her backstage at my boyfriend's show. Fingers crossed behind my back. I hope they break up quick. I mean, again, Charli XCX ahead of her time by predicting the demise of Ratty and Taylor Queendom. But yes, in my opinion, the song is rather obviously about Taylor Swift. She is the monster on the hill. She's too big to hang out, and she is slowly lurching towards your favorite city. It makes sense that her specifically backstage at Charli's boyfriend's show in the UK, which is, you know, maybe in Charli's mind, her turf, makes her feel small and unaccomplished. And you'll notice that she doesn't blame Taylor Swift for making her feel this way, or even suggest that Taylor doesn't deserve it or wasn't kind to her. She says over and over, I feel all these feelings that I can't control. In terms of adding a notch to her ongoing performance of writing about the experience of being famous, this is an excellent addition. Before we get into Girl So Confusing, let's talk about Brat Deluxe, because it's released before then. Charli uses the Brat wall again to unveil it, and then she changes all the Spotify cover art for her past records to fit the Brat vibe. She understands how to manufacture a moment and commit to a bit. Give her a little budget and look what she can do. It was pretty easy to figure out who Sympathy as a Knife was about, but Girl So Confusing was a little bit more, well, confusing. There were many guesses going around on the internet, working itself up into a frenzy, doing the sleuthing, and it was narrowed down to Marina, Lorde, and Rina Sawayama. I personally don't think Lorde and Charli really look alike, but Charli has been mistaken for Lorde and signed autographs as her many times in person before, so I think that note kind of sealed the deal. Lorde also very quickly wrote a gushing Instagram story about the record, which is unusual because she's not really on social media. This song was a little bit more shocking because it was less deferential. This was less like, you're so successful you make me feel bad, and it was more of, we are occupying the same space, and I don't know if I even really like what you do or who you are, and I don't know how you feel about it either. Think about it. Lorde and Charli are both alternative gods in their own right. They do very different things, but I would say their audience overlap is quite big. But still, it kind of shocks me that Charli compares herself to Lorde because their music is so different. I think this was maybe a bigger issue and a longer rooted dynamic way back when, from when Charli was doing Sucker and Lorde was really popping off with Pure Heroin. The lyrics on this song are kind of, you know, sometimes I think you hate me and I hate you. It feels awkward when we're together because we have nothing in common. I can't tell if you want to see me fail. She basically in the second verse is like, okay, stop writing your weird, intense poems and come to my party and stop acting like you're better than me. But the undercurrent of that is, are you better than me? Is the art that you make, the poetic, thoughtful lyricism, more important than what I'm doing now? And I love the simplicity of the hook on this song. As we've discussed, Charli's performing a high level of nuance here, but it's so sublimely summed up by Girl So Confusing. It is so confusing to be a girl. And then the gag of the century. The Brat wall says Lorde, and here we go. I have to say, I was gagged by this addition. Props to Lorde majorly for hopping on this quickly and being as honest as she was. Her contribution here really takes the song into a new stratosphere and reminds me of the Lorde that I knew and loved pre-Solar Power. Please come back. I miss you, girl. Lorde is a figure in popular culture that is not often present. Her impact is felt, but she's not on social media. She doesn't really do many interviews and hasn't been on a record cycle for like a good 2 years. So to drag her out of her cave and to confess with this level of intimacy, I mean, it was a brilliant creative decision. So hats off to Charli XCX for making it happen by writing the song in the first place. The heel turn of the tone because of what Lorde actually has to say in response is so compelling. It actually kind of makes Charli look a little bit mean, I think, because Lorde clearly did not have the same perception of their combative and competitive relationship. She was surprised. Honestly, Lorde was speechless. She was locked in her head, and she felt that Charli's party girl, cool persona was too much for her in a time when she was constantly overanalyzing her appearance and fixating on her weight. She had bigger fish to fry mentally. Then she talks about this defensive posture that she's created over the years, and I think we can all see this with Lorde. she has a cool sense of remove, and for lack of a better word, it can come across as pretentiousness. Lorde breaks the fourth wall of holding that defense mechanism and talks about how she hadn't even realized until Charli's voicemail that she had been building a weapon, and it was all a projection that Charli believes, and she gets that. And I think it's really important that we have those two different perspectives here, how two people can perceive an issue, or one can have an issue and the other one cannot even know there's an issue, perceive them so differently, and you know what? Then we get the iconic lines that say, the internet will go crazy when we put this to bed, and let's work it out on the remix, and they do. Gosh, this is one of my favorite pop girl cultural moments ever. And then after this, it's just offline, soak up the online success time. She's performing with Troy, she's doing more party girl sets as well as Brat live shows, and then Apple starts to go viral on TikTok, and we all know that a 15-second clip can really do wonders for an album cycle. And I think that it also helped extend Brat's longevity and increase the reign of Brat Summer. Do you see, though, how Brat Summer was a sequence of choices and moments online and offline? It wasn't focus grouped to death by a bunch of old men in a conference room. It kind of created its own rhythm that began to flow as Charli started putting herself out there and believing in the work she was promoting and responding to it in real time. And the fans are also getting involved and helping make it happen as well by doing all the Girls So Confusing edits, flying planes with banners that say Brat Summer, religiously documenting the Brat Wall's evolution. It felt like a cult classic was finally getting the elusive commercial success she was pining after all over this record. Ironic, isn't it? Think about how that plays into Charli's meta-narrative about chronicling being famous. What if the best way to get really famous was to stop pretending that you don't want to be? And it's still not over. In response to Pitchfork's declaration of Brat Summer's death, Charli tweeted, "Oh, really?" and then dropped Guess featuring Billie, which is a really smart single choice. A label executive would have preferred Apple, I'm sure, given that it's going viral, but Guess was a really good choice because it had been a sleeper viral sensation from the record, and getting Billie and her classic whisper singing on it was a great idea. It's also clear already that Brat has opened Charli's doors to more mainstream possibility. Having Billie on a track is a huge get for her, and the budget for the video clearly was not $2 in a six-pack. So let's return to the question I posed at the beginning of this video. Is Brat Summer over? To a certain extent, it is kind of over because it's not an organic sensation anymore. When politicians hop in on memes and trends, it's like the teacher trying to get in on an inside joke, like, it's just not going to happen, babe, you're killing the vibe. But the essence of Brat Summer is about being a bad bitch who's also sensitive and maybe a little bit insecure, and but trying to be better about that and trying to be more honest with their friends and live fully. That will live on forever, divas. It will. It's also just stupid to declare Brat Summer dead because of commercialization when the only reason why it existed in the first place was to sell something. A product, Charli, and the album. Like, did you think it just fell out of a coconut tree and Charli was doing this for the good of her own heart? No. The social media impressions alone, as we mentioned, generated millions of dollars in value for the brands that she partnered with, like Givenchy and Balenciaga. Just because you don't think it's cool that Kamala Harris has now hopped on it, doesn't mean that it wasn't always kind of co-opted to begin with. Brat Summer is what you make of it. You own it. I say this to you, the viewer, and I will say there is something really sad and pathetic about seeing the flop brands try to copy it, but we're all discerning internet citizens, and we know a fake when we see one. What's going to be really interesting, I think, is where Charli goes from here. What I like about her as an artist is that everything's kind of always up for revision. Further remixes, I'm sure, are not off the table for this era, and she's got 2 tours to complete. Will this era translate into mainstream commercial success in the long term? I'm not sure. Brat Summer was a perfect storm, and I think it would be foolish to try and recreate it, but Charli is exciting precisely because we never really know what she's going to do next. It will probably be very different to this, and I think her sweet spot is always going to be as a cult classic. It gives her more freedom to be creative and to arrive at moments like Brat to build up to them. I personally don't want another crash, so take your time, diva. Well, I hope all of that rambling gave you a better sense of what Brat Summer is, if it's dead or not, where it will go from here, and leave me a comment and let me know, what was your relationship like to Charli XCX before this record came out? Were you a big fan? Were you not? How has it changed in the wake of Brat? Did you like Brat? Did you have Brat Summer yourself? I want to hear about it. And thank you again so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video.